Welcome to the 2023-2024 Deep Dive Series, where we are going in from every single team in the NBA 30th to first, from worst to first, and we have at number 23 the Toronto Raptors, who are a little bit stuck in basketball Siberia, if you will. They're not sure if they should tank, they're not sure if they should blow up the team. They're doing a little bit of both. They let Fred VanVleet walk, who got an unreal contract from the Houston Rockets, who, as you can see, was not a needle mover. Is not one of those generational players. He was very good, pivotal to them winning a championship in the 2019 season, but are they really getting that much worse in picking up somebody like Dennis Schroeder, who was really good for the Los Angeles Lakers? They did move on from head coach Nick Nurse, and they are picking up a new unknown talent in Darko, whatever his name is, that I'll have to look up in the future. But this is where the Toronto Raptors are coming in at number 23, finishing exactly 500 last year, 41-41, which is where you don't want to be when you're an NBA team. You don't want to be mediocre. You want to be really good, competing for a championship, going into the luxury tax, signing superstars, or you want to be really bad and collecting those top 5 picks like the Rockets, like the Thunder, like the Magic. And unfortunately, the Raptors have a little bit too much pride on their hands, as they are finishing 10th, right around that play-in tournament spot, 14th in the power rankings last season, and they're just continuing to fall off, get a little bit worse, and not really improve the team in any dramatic manner. Now, if there's a humongous trade that comes out where they trade Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby and they pick up Damian Lillard or whatever happens, this team can immediately go from pretender to contender. But for right now, they're coming in with that 78.64 rating, which is where they're going to put them a little bit ahead of those teams that are the Spurs and the Bulls, which is just not really where you want to be. But this offseason, they did lose Fred VanVleet, who, like I said, you have to give full credit for everything that he offered and brought to this team when they went on that championship run with Kawhi Leonard and Pascal Siakam as well. But Fred VanVleet was really bad last season, was dealing with injuries, took a lot of shots away from the younger guys, had to get his counting stats up, and he was really probably for long stretches the best player, certainly the best shooter, because this team did come in 28th in three-point shooting last year, and nobody could shoot, including Fred VanVleet. Delano Banton, kind of their experimental point guard wing player hybrid, has gone on to greener pastures in Boston, and Will Barton, kind of a good riddance at this point. Will Barton is probably not going to be playing in the NBA for too much longer. They did pick up Grady Dick with the number 13th pick, I believe, which is a pretty good draft value for him. I had him as a top 10 pick, one of the few guys in the NBA draft this season who could actually shoot above about 36% from the three-point line. And they are picking up Jalen McDaniels and Dennis Schroeder, two very interesting pieces that we're going to have to see where they fit on this roster, what they're going to offer to the team, who are still in their 20s, who still have a lot to offer for NBA basketball. But let's hop into this Raptors starting 5, where we're going to be coming in with Dennis Schroeder, with Dennis the Menace. And now there is the chance, the very off chance, that Dennis moves to the bench and Scotty Barnes comes in and plays the point guard. I'll touch a little bit more on that when we talk about Scotty Barnes, but I just think this is the projected starting 5 lineup in a Dennis Schroeder, OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and Jakob Poeltl starting 5 at least to begin the season. Now, Dennis is a really good point guard. Let's be completely honest. He played well off LeBron, and even when LeBron was out, there are times when he's unplayable because that shot is really bad. Career 33% from the three-point line for a short guy is not going to cut it, and his assist-to-turnover ratio is good, not great. 4.5 last year to 1.7, but he's around career 2 turnovers per game, so it's more of a 2-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. He does run the pick and roll pretty well. The problem is the defenders can always go under because whenever he steps back to shoot, that's probably a good thing for the defense. He's a really good slasher if he had any athleticism whatsoever, but he's one of these 6'1" point guards who doesn't. He has to rely on mid-range jumpers, and he has to rely on floaters instead of getting to the rim and drawing fouls, and his shot really has fallen off pretty bad. I'm looking at his career stats, and there was a time in OKC where he shot 38% from the three-point line on high volume, even 35% for the Lakers is when he's shooting a little bit better than what we're used to, and unfortunately, that's just not who he is. He is a poor three-point shooter with that horrible set shot, slow release, slow mechanics, and overall is a fairly mediocre offensive player, which is why he's coming in with that 77 overall. Defensively, when it comes to the playoffs, he is a really good point of attack guard defender. Now, when it's not the playoffs, he doesn't give you full effort because there's 82 games in an NBA season and nobody's giving you full effort. But in the regular season, the defensive rating isn't great, but we've seen in the playoffs when they went up against the Nuggets and when they went up against who did Lakers play last season? Was it the Warriors? He is a menace. That's why they call him Dennis the Menace. For on-ball, undersized point guards, guys like Steph Curry, guys like Markelle Fultz, they're going to have their struggles with Dennis because he is pesky. He's got great agility on the perimeter, and he's going to get up in you and not let you get easy baskets. And there's a lot of good size around him that's going to compensate. So let's say somebody gets around him, they're going to have to run into an OG Anunoby. They're going to have to run into a Jakob Poeltl. And I expect his defensive rating, which has always been really solid, around 110, 115, would even get higher once the playoffs come around. All that being said, though, he is more of a secondary playmaker. That's why he played so well off LeBron James, because LeBron James was the point guard for the Lakers. I don't care what position that he's listed as, small forward, power forward, shooting guard, center. LeBron James is the point guard. And they may try to replicate that with Scottie Barnes on this lineup. But for the most part, Dennis Schroeder is going to be a solid signing, point of attack defender, occasional closer for the team because LeBron James is afraid of taking closing shots and Dennis Schroeder wasn't, and backup playmaker when Scottie Barnes doesn't want to run the point. Moving on to the next player who's the homegrown talent, who's part of every single trade offer whatsoever, OG Anunoby. Now, if the rumors are true, and there was a team offering 3 first-round picks for OG Anunoby, it is a national travesty that Masai Ujiri kept him through the trade deadline, because you get 3 first-round picks for OG, you get 3 for Pascal Siakam, you look like the Thunder, you look like the Rockets who have picks into the 2030s for days. I am taking those trades 9 times out of 10 and building around Scottie Barnes. But if that's not the case, if they were like lottery protected or whatever picks for OG Anunoby, I'm fine with keeping him around because he's one of the few shooters. You look at his shooting, 38% from the 3-point line. Literally, I think the highest on the team, at least for the starters. He's a lockdown defender. Actually made the all-defensive second team last year, 1.9 steals per game. Defensive rating 113, which is actually career low because his average is 110. 38% from the 3-point line on high volume. That is more than good enough. Now, the playmaking and the shot creation is still coming along, which is totally fine for OG. He's going into his year 26 season. Now, this is sort of a contract year for OG. He's going to get a $18.9 million player option, but it's safe to say that OG is one of the pieces that you build around. And I know he's a part of every single trade rumor ever. So is Pascal Siakam. So at times is Scottie Barnes. And I can understand because he offers modern flexibility to any team. He can play the 2 defensively. He can play the 3 defensively. He can play the 4 defensively. He gets up into his man and just locks them down. He's one of the few what we would actually consider lockdown defenders in today's NBA. On top of that, shooting 39% from the 3-point line, and his stats and his 3-point rating has steadily gone up. His rookie year, 37%, and then it fell off 33, and then 39, 36, 38.7% last year. So for his career, he has been solid and steady from the 3-point line, not a flash in the pan, not a one-hit wonder like Dennis Schroeder was, shooting 38% one season, but he's a career 33% 3-point shooter. When OG Anunoby has the ball in his hands and he's taking a jump shot, for the most part, it is a good thing. The problem with him is that he's probably in the top 20, maybe top 30 as far as starting wing players are concerned. Again, minimal shot creation of his own, which isn't too much of a problem because they have playmakers like Dennis Schroeder, Scottie Barnes, Pascal Siakam already on the team, already on the court, making plays. But he has limited upside, which is a little bit interesting because he is an athletic freak. So he is going to be starting at the shooting guard. Again, this roster is going to be up in arms. We're going to see who's going to go where. If Scottie plays the 1 and Gary Trent Jr. plays the 2, then OG at the 3, Pascal at the 4, Jakob Poeltl at the 5. Maybe they play Pascal at the 5. This roster could go any number of directions once the regular season starts, but I feel like you have your best players on the court. This is what they're going to rock day 1. Moving on to Mr. Scottie Barnes, and like I said, would love to see point Scottie Barnes for at least 1 season. Kind of like what they did with Giannis, kind of like what they did with Devin Booker. Just at the very least, see if he has that versatility to his game, because I compared him, and I know it's hyperbolic. I compared him to Magic Johnson coming out of the draft for a reason. I had him as the number 3 prospect behind Cade Cunningham and behind Jalen Green. I had him better than Evan Mobley, which I think to this point is proven true. I had him better than Jalen Suggs, which certainly has proven true. And honestly, he might be better than Jalen Green as well. Is he better than Cade Cunningham? That is a question. But I think we need to coin a new term for big-bodied passers who can't shoot, like point centers, point really big forwards who are shooting 28% from the 3-point line. That's unacceptable. Had a really rough season last year. For the good, he's got an infectious passion for the game. He's just loving it. He's always hyped. His teammates are loving it. He's a positive force for the locker room. He's an above-average passer who is great in transition. When I'm thinking of Scottie Barnes, I'm thinking of half-court, no-look, one-handed bullet passes to easy layups for his team, and that's why I had him as the number 3 prospect coming out of the draft. He plays with effort day in and day out. He grabs rebounds. He does all of the things that you want your star players to do. He has really nice touch around the rim, a solid finisher. He just can't shoot. He's got that issue where he's squared up way too much, and he needs to completely tear down his shot mechanics and rebuild them from the ground up, and he hasn't done that. His feet are completely square at the basket. He holds the ball down the middle of his body. It's just awful free throw form, awful jump shot form. His defense in the post is really strong, and I'm going to give him that, but on the perimeter, he gets blown by way too easily. Now, it's a little better last season than it was his freshman year. I don't know what it was about 2 seasons ago, but he just could not play perimeter defense. He was getting blown by every single possession, and Raptors fans were telling me that I was the idiot. Every time Scottie Barnes was on the court guarding like a quicker guard or a quicker forward, they would just blow by him, and he would funnel the player right into the non-rim protecting big, whoever was out on the court, Chris Boucher, Kem Burge, Pascal Siakam, whoever. He would honestly give up easy points nonstop, and it was frustrating, but it got a little bit better. He kind of learned how to use his hips, bump his man without committing a foul on the perimeter, and I can appreciate that. He just can't create his own shot beyond floaters and layups around the rim, which is, it's fine, but it's not consistently reliable. It's not a mid-range jump shot. It's not a three-point jump shot. You need that to build the franchise around you, and if he can't shoot, you have to fill him with a team that can shoot. You got to be like a Giannis, where you say, okay, Drew Holiday can shoot, Chris Middleton can shoot, Brook Lopez can shoot, Bobby Portis can shoot, Wes Matthews can shoot, Grayson Allen can shoot, and the Raptors are the 20th team in the NBA in three-point shooting for a reason, because only OG Anunoby can shoot. So I'm just really hoping that Scottie Barnes works on those shot mechanics, because I'm starting to see teams build a Giannis wall on him, and worse yet, it's actually working, which is why I think he had a sophomore slump last season. I think teams started to figure him out. I think they built the scouting board around him. They said, put a big on him. Don't let him bully you with his strength. Don't let him elevate over with that long wingspan, and just make him shoot the jumper, and he just couldn't shoot. All that being said, I love Scottie Barnes, and the potential is limitless. If he plays the point guard and they figure out a way to get Gary Trent Jr. and like Jalen McDaniels in the court, play Pascal Siakam at the 5, this team is lethal. If Scottie Barnes gets his three-point shooter up to 35% this season, this team is lethal. It all depends on the Scottie Barnes development track, because there's a lot of solid pieces around him, which is why this core of players was able to win a championship with Kawhi Leonard leading the way. So it's not doom and gloom for the Raptors. It's just we're depending on Scottie Barnes turning into a superstar, and he just didn't show that second-year development and that second-year jump that we expect from guys who are Rookie of the Year. Moving on to Mr. Pascal Siakam, who, Spicy P, terrible nickname, is just a versatile weapon. He's an all-around player who can do a little bit of everything. Can play the 3, is a natural 4, can even play small ball 5, rebounds, shoots, assists, playmakes, defense, rim protects, decent handler of the ball, facilitation. He can score in bunches despite his poor shot. He's just a little too reminiscent, a little too replicative of Scottie Barnes, being honest. Neither of them can shoot. That last year of 32.4% from the three-point line was honestly probably pretty good for him. You look at his career, rookie season, 14%, sophomore season, 22%, then he shot 37% in that championship run, then 36, 29, 34, and 32 last year. Just really inconsistent, and honestly, it leans more bad than good. And he's got a little bit of that hitch in his jump shot. I don't know why a lot of these players have it. I don't know why somebody says, hey, you see this awkward, uncomfortable pause you have right before your release of your jump shot? Don't do that. Same thing with Giannis. They just have these hitches, and it's problematic on any shot outside of 10 feet. Now, Pascal Siakam offensively is prone to having awful games, and that's because his scoring comes from primarily around the hoop. Aggressive, effort, drive into the body of the defender, get to the free throw line. If he doesn't do that, if he doesn't have that mentality, he's going to give you 12 points on 18 shots. His mid-range jumper is okay. It's reliable, but you can see from his free throws per game that he gets his points by driving in your body. In that championship season, he elevated from 3 to 5, and then he's been steadily around 5.4, 5.6, and 6.7 last year, career high in aggression, career high in free throws per game. Now, what is he going to play for this team? Is he going to play the 5? Is he going to play the 4? Is he going to play the 3? Is he going to play the 2 even for this team? Because they don't really have a position out there in Toronto. Yet to be seen, but Pascal Siakam is right on that all-star tier level of player who's going to be really solid for the team. This is just about as good as he's going to get going into a year 29 season. He's going into a contract year as well, and that's when players tend to play their best basketball, trying to get that bag before they start to regress. We'll see what Pascal Siakam offers to the Raptors this year, or if he's a mid-season trade. Moving on to their center, Mr. Jakob Poeltl. And it's interesting because on the one hand, Jakob Poeltl got a little bit overpaid. $20 million for a guy who's a borderline starter just isn't great, but it is a flat contract. It's not one of those that's going up every single season, a little bit. flat $20 million a year, player option in year 2027, I want to say. And Jakob is a legit 7-footer, which is rare in today's games. There's not too many 7-footers that are out there. Every single season, he hovers around that high 60s, mid 70s games played per season, which is exactly what you need from a big guy who's a big body, who's going to fill up space in the lane. Now, he's better than you think at almost everything. He's above average at passing. He's above average around the rim. He's got a nice jump floater that I think he picked up, not in Toronto, but I think he picked up with the Spurs. He's an above average defender given his size. He can play drop coverage, and he can even move his feet on the perimeter better than you think. He's always a guy that you just say, oh, I'm going to blow by him. He's going to be a mismatch, kind of like Kevon Looney, and he's going to hold his own because he plays angles well, he's smart, and he's a really strong rim protector. Surprisingly, at least more for the Spurs than it was for the Raptors last season, he was averaging 1.8, 1.7, almost 2 blocks a game for a guy who cannot jump. It's because he's a really intelligent player who knows how to rotate, who knows how to be in the right position, and that comes from basically training with the San Antonio Spurs. With Jakob Poeltl, it's a little funny that he got drafted by the Raptors, traded away for Kawhi Leonard, Greg Popovich developed him, let him be the best player that he could be, and then he comes back to earn his money in Toronto. It's just kind of a funny development track. Now, his issue is that he offers you basically nothing offensively besides that little floater, that Richaun Holmes push shot. His free throws are horrible. He cannot shoot to save his life. Career from the free throw line, 59%. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong stats. It's 59% last year, career 53%. So the hack of Jakob Poeltl is real, but he is a lethal role man these days. One of those perfectly smart, intelligent, unathletic rim runners. He's a rim protector despite the fact that he can't jump. He's a great defender and a legit 7-footer. Somebody who can compete with the Joel Embiids in his own conference. Somebody who can compete with the Nikola Jokic's. He's not better than them, but he's on that kind of Yusuf Nurkic tier of player, which is desperately needed in today's ever-growing NBA. But that is going to do it for the starting lineup. I know there is not a lot to say. This Raptors team is kind of stuck around. They mix and match a few pieces here and there, and the fact that Fred VanVleet is gone can only be potential upside for this team because Fred was holding them back last season trying to get his numbers. Moving on to the next 5, and I wasn't really sure who's going to be in the starting lineup and who's not, but we have Gary Trent Jr., who's always potentially a starter if that three-point shooter is falling. He's really the second good shooter and the only other good shooter on this Raptors squad, 37% from the three-point line. His problem is that he's so inconsistent. He's the definition of a microwave inconsistent three-point shooter because he'll drop 30. He'll drop a 50 piece on you, and then he'll shoot 1 of 12 and give you 3 points for 8 games in a row. His scoring is completely reliant on being open when he catches the ball. He's got a 1 dribble pull-up shot, but that's not reliable. He doesn't play make whatsoever. His defense is mediocre at best. Last season, defensive rating was 116. He's been a negative to average defensive box plus minus guy. It's just the definition of inconsistent, and it must have been infuriating for head coach Nick Nurse, which is why he got benched a lot of games. He only started 44 games despite being one of the few guys on the team who can shoot, because you never know what you're going to get with Gary Trent Jr. ever since basically the second season of his career. Now, the one saving grace about Gary Trent Jr. is that he's only going into his year 25 season. He was a one-and-done guy, came into the NBA at age 20, so even though it feels like he's been around the league forever, there's still a ton of youth and a ton of potential for him to improve his offensive game. Defensively, he's solid. He's strong enough to not be a liability out there, and when you got a whole ton of length in guys like Jakob Poeltl, Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes, it's not going to be a problem being a league average defender. Just can Gary Trent add a little more versatility, because he's certainly not going to be a playmaker. He averages basically 1.5 assists to 1.0 turnovers, which is not what you want to see from somebody having the ball in their hands. And that's when he's not even trying to play make. I can't imagine playing him at the point guard position. But can Gary Trent Jr. learn the dribble pull-up? Can he figure out a few things like when to slash? Because there's a guy coming hot on his trail in Jalen McDaniels and Grady Dick, who are going to say, we're also good three-point shooters, but guess what? We're not as inconsistent as you. We won't get benched. Speaking of Mr. Jalen McDaniels, who was one of the big signings this year for them, actually. Now, I did watch a video that was saying Jalen McDaniels is the second coming of Kawhi Leonard, and I just said pump the brakes. I know he's wearing number 2 for your team, but relax. But he is one of the McDaniels twins. He's got that perfect NBA build, 6'9", about 215, lean, athletic, explosive, can do anything. He's just a mediocre shooter. That 33% from the three-point line is honestly unacceptable. He kind of seemed like a guy who had a little more upside, and his brother has lived up to it, being an all defensive caliber player, elite lockdown perimeter defender, while Jalen has been a little bit more mediocre. And you kind of see it with these twins when you see it with the Morris twins, and we might be seeing it with the Thompson twins, where one is clearly better because the difference in the NBA isn't your natural born talent, it's how hard you work day in and day out. Do you get those extra 100 shots up every single night after practice? Do you get that 3-point rating up to 35, 36%? Do you move laterally? But Jalen is a pretty good stat stuffer. He does have a little bit of handle to him, as you can see from his 1.6 assists last season. He's a solid offensive rebounder. If the three starts falling, he could certainly take over his starting job from probably Dennis Schroeder, and you move Scotty Barnes to the one, or Gary Trent Jr., or even Pascal Siakam if his 3-point shot is closer to 40 than it is to a 33%. But his entire NBA career is hinging on that 3-point jumper, and he's got that natural 6'9" build that they love out there in Toronto, probably why they signed him. Moving on to the rest of the roster, and this is where things start to fall off a little bit. Really just not sure who to put here. I could have put Malachi Flynn, but I feel like he had a really unimpressive last season. So instead we have Thaddeus Young, who is not ideal. He's going into his age 35 season. He's also 6'8", which they love, and a horrible 3-point shooter. Last season, he shot 17% from the 3-point line, 69% from the free throw line. Nice. He does have a little handle to him, which is why he averages those 1.4 assists last year. He stretched that out to his per 36. It's actually 3.4 assists to 1.9 turnovers. Not great, not terrible, but he does do a little bit of that Domantas Sabonis playmaking at the elbow. If they can run some offenses where he's finding cutters, it's not terrible. He's a really strong rebounder as well. You stretch out his per 36 numbers across the board, it'll give you 11 points and 7.5 rebounds. Not great, not terrible. He's old. He's a great positive force for the locker room. I really think they should have cut him or traded him or gotten rid of him, however you do it in today's NBA, and got some younger guys on the roster. Moving on to a younger guy is Chris Boucher, who's another one of those classic 6'8" tweener, power forward, center, whatevers that Masai Ujiri loves. And with Chris Boucher, it's a little funny. There was a stat out there where if there's a defender within 6 feet of him shooting the three, he's a 24% 3-point shooter. But when he's got 6+ feet of space, he's a 45% 3-point shooter. And I think that has to do with his incredibly slow shot mechanics. If they can either get it into his head to not shoot the three unless he's wide open, or speed it up, which is much more unlikely, Chris Boucher could be a knockdown stretch 4, stretch 5 guy for this team. He gives you a ton of effort. I think I speak for all Raptors fans when we remember him flying around defensively, offensively, and then going to the bench and just completely passing out because he was exhausted at giving the defensive effort. He doesn't have the best basketball IQ, and going into his age 31 season, I'm not going to expect too much different from Chris Boucher other than maybe 10, 15 minutes a night at most coming off the bench, giving them a little bit of versatility. Now, Precious Achiuwa is more interesting of a player because he's got a little more upside. His 3-point shot for a season did fall at 36%. He has the potential to be one of those Isaiah Stewart. Is he a 4? Is he a 5? Does he pound the glass well? Can he shoot? Can he be a versatile guy for this team? The problem is it reverted back to a horrible 27% last year, which is unacceptable if you're going to be taking the three on high volume. And the difference between why Isaiah Stewart is getting, was it $15 million a year, while Precious Achiuwa is going into a contract year. So this is going to be a big season to see what does he offer you, because defensively, he's not great. He's got a negative defensive box plus minus score. Offensively, got a really negative offensive box plus minus score. Too undersized to be a center. Probably more of a stretch 4, run a double big lineup with him and like Christian Koloko if you're really going to do that, but he needs to knock down that 3-point shot. Otherwise, he's borderline unplayable. Now you stretch out his stats. He is a 16 and 10.4 rebounds per game per 36 guy. So theoretically, he does have it in him, but it was not great going from Miami, taking that huge step up, developing his game, developing a 3-pointer last 2 seasons ago, I guess. And then last season, reverting back to what we see, an undersized 5 who can be aggressive and attack the glass, but can't shoot the 3 and is a liability on the offensive end. So this is going to be a big year for Precious Achiuwa to see really if he's going to stick around on this Raptors team. Moving on to the next 5 with Malachi Flynn, who apparently the fans are loving again. He went from being hated to being loved to being hated to being loved again this season, now that Nick Nurse has completely unleashed him. Now, to me, he's a poor man's Peyton Pritchard. He's an undersized scoring guard. The problem with him is that he's not even great at that. He's at a career true shooting percentage of 48%, 47.9% last year. He just had one of his worst seasons. Now, you could say a lot of that has to do with the crazy and weird Nick Nurse lineups, because Malachi Flynn only played 13 minutes a game for about 50 games last season, only started 2 when they didn't have any other guards on the team, when it was Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., and Malachi Flynn. And Malachi Flynn got banished to the end of the bench because he's not great players. You look at Malachi's per 36, he's got 13 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, basically a 2.5 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. The 3-point shooting hasn't been great, hasn't been terrible. He's been steadily improving. Rookie year 32, then 33, and then last year 35%. So theoretically, the efficiency is getting better, and he's another young guy as well going into his age 25 season. Is he going to be make or break for this team? I don't know. When guys like Jeff Doughton Jr. came in last season and played much better than he did, granted, albeit defensively they were a stopper, while offensively they didn't have the possible potential upside. But Malachi Flynn's lack of frame, coming in at 175 pounds, isn't great. He's not a great lateral quickness guy. Obviously, he's not a rim protector. I just don't know. If that 3-point shot doesn't get closer to a 38% from the 3-point line, I don't see him sticking around on this Raptors squad either. Now, the guy who is a little bit of an X factor for them is Grady Dick, the rookie out of Kansas, because he was one of the guys that could actually shoot in this year's draft, which was surprising. 40% from the 3-point line for Kansas is really good. Now, of course, the college 3-point line is a little bit closer than the NBA 3-point line, but he was probably their second best player last season. He's got a really clean jumper, really smooth mechanics, solid frame on him, about 6'8", good defensive instincts, good offensive instincts, really nice touch around the rim. He just needs to improve his shot quality. I was watching his summer league, and he was putting up these gaudy stats like 2 for 11, 3 for 12 from the field, and it's because he took too many off-balance jumpers. You compare him, and I know it's unfair, but just for the sake of conversation, compare him to a Kevin Durant jump shot. You look at Kevin Durant, it's the same form every single time, from the elbow, from the 3-point line, from mid, wherever Kevin Durant is taking it, from 16 feet out, wherever Kevin Durant is taking his jump shot, it's the exact same form. It's repeatable. And Grady Dick is off balance. He's fallen left, and he's fallen right, and he's fallen back, and he's off balance in any other direction. But once Grady Dick gets that shot quality up, I think he's going to be a much higher percentage from the field. His mid-range jumper is good. He does have good touch around the rim and good offensive instincts to follow his shot, to grab the offensive glass, to attack. And he's got a bit of that Franz Wagner offensive recognition ability, when to take the open jumper versus when to attack the lane and get an easy layup. And if he takes one pump fake, has the defender fly by, chase him off the 3-point line, he'll attack. He'll get 2 guys, 3 guys rotating, do a dump off pass. That's an easy 2 points for the Raptors. So the offensive potential upside is there for Grady Dick. If he shoots 40+% from the 3-point line, he's probably a starter, being completely honest, because he's not a completely minus defender. I love Grady Dick's off-ball movement, and I saw a couple plays where he was looking a bit like Rip Hamilton. If y'all remember the early 2000s days, where he would come off a couple screens, grab the ball, elevate over, hold the jumper, and then splash it from 20 feet out. So Grady Dick has a ton of upside. We'll see what he's going to be able to offer to this team as a rookie. You never know how the college game translates to the next level, and he's not a crazy athletic freak, which is why he wasn't going in top 5, despite being a 40% 3-point shooter from college. Moving on to one of the guys who is a fringe player, who's possible that he's going to be cut, but Jeff Doughton was impressive last year, man. He's a little bit undersized as a 2-way guard, but he's got really long arms, really good quickness, and was a versatile defender. His problem is his shooting is horrific. Think of Frank Ntilikina or Chris Dunn, but Nick Nurse would like him, and he played him on the other team's best point guard going down to the end of the season last year, and Jeff Doughton Jr. is a menacing defender. Now, he only played about 259 minutes last season. He's only played 367 minutes in his career going into an age 26 season. So there's a lot of, we'll have to see what he offers to this team tape, but there is a bit of a hole at the point guard position, especially the backup point guard position, unless Scotty Barnes moves down to play the 1 and Dennis Schroeder solidifies that backup 2 for the bench. And if Malachi Flynn underperforms, and let's say Dennis Schroeder underperforms, Jeff Doughton Jr. could certainly take advantage of this opportunity, come in and be the backup point guard, be a defensive stopper for the team. We saw Chris Dunn have an incredible season last year. Why can't Jeff Doughton Jr.? As for Otto Porter Jr., he was hurt last year. Surprise. There was, I think he hurt his toe, which turned into a season-ending injury where he missed 74 games. And I mean, theoretically, he's everything that the Raptors need. He's scoring, veteran leadership, He won a championship with the Warriors and helped show this team how to play basketball. He's got good passing, good instincts, solid two-way guy. But if he ever is on the court, he's good, but he's never on the court, which is bad. And that's basically the entire story of his career, is that Otto Porter Jr. has the theoretical upside to be one of the better players in the NBA, and he's never healthy. Somebody who was healthy last year, though, is Christian Coloco, and I was a huge fan of his game out of Arizona. He strikes me as my prototypical rim runner that I love. Now, he is closer to 6'10" than I think that listed 7 foot, but he's got one of those freaky long wingspans that'll make him a good rim runner. Guys like him make the perfect backup big. They're raw, they're athletic, they have a ton of potential, and he's actually 6'10" instead of Precious Achiuwa, who's like 6'7". He can be their backup 5. He can be their rim running, rim protecting, defensive first, lob threat 5 that they don't really have. No offense to Jakob Poeltl, but he's not going to jump you out of the gym where Christian Coloco certainly can. You look at his blocks per 36 last year. 2.6 as a rookie is almost incredible. Now, that 3-point shot isn't going to be falling anytime soon. At Arizona, it was bad last year. He was 1 of 12, which is why he comes in at an 8.3%. He's just a rebounding and lob threading machine, prototypical rim runner. And I'm being completely honest, I could see him taking the backup role, even theoretically taking over the starting role with that lob threat ability if he continues to develop his game ahead of Jakob Poeltl, because I am super high on Christian Coloco. I was a big fan of his game in Arizona, big fan of what he did last year, just needs to get a little more on the court. And that is going to do it for the last of the 5. On to the rest of the team, and I know Garrett Temple's on a guaranteed contract, so I think Jeff Doughton Jr. might be the odd man out. I just can't imagine a world where a team that's developing their guys would take like a 90-year-old Garrett Temple over Jeff Doughton Jr., who actually showed them something last year. If they do that, awful management, awful giving Garrett Temple the guaranteed contract. But theoretically, Garrett Temple could come in and give him some backup point guard minutes, maybe like 5 minutes a night, and then suck the rest of the... I don't know. He's here. We'll see. They did bring in Javon Freeman-Liberty, which was a steal from the Chicago Bulls because he was the best player on that Chicago Bulls team. If you haven't seen my coverage, go watch the Chicago Bulls deep dive, which is actually one before this one. But Javon Freeman-Liberty was not the best player for the Bulls team. He was the best player on the court. He was stuffing the stat sheet, making his splash from 3. He was giving you like a 26, 6, and 7 stat line every single game of the Summer League. He was a bucket, 3-level scorer, even passed the ball well. He doesn't have a great handle, and he is a bad defender given his size, his stiffness, his lack of strength. I didn't see any awful defensive personally, but he does have an average defensive rating of 119, which isn't ideal. But he's one of those young guys who just kind of the league missed out on him. And when he gets minutes, he plays well. So look to see him coming in, possibly competing for a backup or third string point guard for this team. Ron Harper Jr., I'm not a big fan of. I watched his tape, watched him play. He's slow, he's unathletic, he's got a bad jump shot form, his release point is too low, he's got a bad handle, he's a lazy defender. There was a lot of times where he takes bad angles and gives up a layup, or he gets behind plays too frequently after a made bucket or a missed bucket. So he's just a two-way, low-effort dude. The best highlight that I saw that can really epitomize Ron Harper Jr.'s career was he motioned everybody to clear out to take on the Detroit Pistons' Tosin F. Bowman 1v1, and then he tried to do a little in-and-out dribble, get the blow-by, got nowhere, tried to back down F. Bowman, who's like 6'8", 250 pounds, failed that, and then threw the ball out as the shot clock was expiring for a missed 3, and then later would foul the same Tosin F. Bowman after missing a 3-pointer of his own in the next possession. So Ron Harper Jr., honestly, they could cut and I wouldn't care much about. Marquise Noel, a fun player, but he's probably going to be nowhere at about 5'6". He's a strong passer, has incredible vision, really nice touch, solid jumper from the 3-point line. A lot of these guys that are in the G League, I would say, man, I wish they were 5 inches taller. But for Marquise, it's, man, I wish he was 12 inches taller because he's just too short to play in today's NBA. I don't care what stats Isaiah Thomas put up for one season. He just cannot play defense. He's going to be a liability every single time he's on the court, no matter who he's trying to guard. Now, he's a good decision maker. He knows when to pull up, when to attack, when to dump off, when to skip pass. He's near masterful with the ball in the pick and roll. And this was in the Summer League with guys he doesn't even know. Imagine if he goes to a team and builds chemistry with them. Marquise Noel's vision is unreal, but he's like 5'3", so he's not going to play in the NBA. I'm sorry, no matter how much you like him. Mohamedou, I don't know how you're supposed to say his name. I've heard everybody's pronounce it Guy or G. However you pronounce his name, is an interesting prospect, kind of a tweener guy at about 6'9", Not a great shooter, not big enough to be a 5, was a 3-year college guy, shot around 34% from the 3-point line, which might be good enough depending on how he shoots in the NBA. Long arms, really skinny, kind of a JT Thor, Kai Jones for the Charlotte Hornets guy. Just a really bad perimeter defender, has an awful handle in this disgusting chest-high dribble. He's basically a walking turnover machine. Bad passing, bad accuracy, bad vision, awful defensive awareness. He misses cutters, rotations, ball fakes, etc. He just has no defensive discipline whatsoever. Not impressed on that. But as far as the athletics are concerned, as far as the measurables, Mohamedou could be a good NBA player in the future. And lastly, Kevin Obenar, who we only saw, I think, 9 minutes of in the Summer League. So there's not too much tape on him, but I don't see an NBA player in him either. No agility. Just looks like a classic Raptors, undersized, hardworking big. He would run around, he would turn the ball over, he missed 3-point shots, he would die on screens, and he's about 6'8", so we'll see if he even sticks around for much longer than the training camp. And moving on to their coach and culture ranking, where they're kind of come in at a tier 4. Now, honestly, after firing Nick Nurse and just kind of seeing where they're stuck in this basketball Siberia, really since the 2019 season, I was going to put him at a tier 5. But I just trust in Masai Ujiri a little too much. I believe he knows how to turn this team around and build a winning culture because he's shown that he can do that, at least for one season. Imagine how many chips have Kawhi Leonard stuck around. But they did have to get rid of head coach Nick Nurse, who alienated a lot of players in a lot of the locker room, which is a big concern. They've tried to implement this positionless NBA, draft a guy who's 6'8", sign only guys who are 6'8", but can't shoot the 3, and it hasn't really translated to winning basketball. So we'll have to see how this team performs. They got a rookie head coach, which is always hit and miss in today's NBA. They don't really have a clear vision. Do they want to win or do they want to lose? Do they want to be 500 or do they want to be bottom of the barrel? There's no clear understanding of what this Raptors culture is going into next season, which is why they're going to come in at a tier 4. Just a lot of uncertainty. I still believe in Masai Ujiri. I think he knows what it takes to put together a championship team, but he's going to have to make the hard decision at some point of understanding that Pascal Siakam alone isn't going to carry you to a championship. But you look at their salaries, there's nothing too bad here outside of Jakob Poeltl earning $20 million a year. Is that the worst contract? No, but Pascal Siakam's going to be off the books. We'll see where he goes after the season. That's basically $40 million gone. Then you have Jakob Poeltl's contract, then OG Anunoby going into a possible contract year with a player exception. Gary Trent Jr., final year of his deal after accepting the player option. Dennis Schroeder and Chris Boucher kind of on expensive deals. Not great, but not terrible. You can absorb that if you don't have any potential dreams of drafting a superstar. Then you got Thad Young, he's gone. Otto Porter Jr., he's gone. Grady Dick, rookie. Jalen McDaniels, that's a good contract, 4.5 a year. Scotty Barnes, rookie deal. Malachi Flynn, contract year. Precious Achiuwa, contract year. Garrett Temple, probably gone. Jeff Doughton Jr., probably gone. Christian Koloko, rookie deal. And then a bunch of two-way guys and 10-day guys. So they're not in a horrible spot. They just really need to pick what direction are they going to go. Because to me, they kind of feel like the modern Pacers. Now that the Pacers have decided that they want to rebuild, they pick up Tyrese Haliburton, Ben Mathurin, and now they're looking to win now. The Raptors need to say, this team isn't good enough to win a championship. We're going to have to trade away some of our more expendable guys, let them walk. And they've already started that process, letting Fred VanVleet go. Now they need to figure out when to let go of Pascal Siakam, how much value they can soak out of OG Anunoby. So that's why they're coming in with the 37.5 win projection season. It's not great. I really think instead of fighting for the play-in tournament for what, the 3rd, 4th season in a row, they should begin the tank, trade OG, trade Pascal. But that's just me. Let me know what your thoughts are on this team, because they are going to be coming in at 23. Any team has the potential to go up to a top 10 team if Scotty Barnes turns into the second coming of Magic Johnson. But let me know what your thoughts are on this team, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and I will catch you in the next one.